inflation, trade wars, AI. So when we look at the news, we often see a lot of uncertainty. If you look at the future predictions right now in the news and stuff, and the people that are talking about finances, it can feel very uncertain between artificial intelligence potentially replacing everyone's jobs to the tariff and trade wars that are going on all across the globe at this point, to even inflation that has been creeping up the last 4 or 5 years now. So when we look at all these different news articles out there about all this stuff, it can give you a great feeling of anxiety. And when we think about anxiety, anxiety is just a feeling of lacking control. You lack control over your own life. You feel like you have no direct impact on these things. And when you read these things, inflation, trade wars, AI, nobody really does have control. I mean, very few people have the position or power to make the changes necessary to control those things. So we're all out of control in that way. That can be a big influence on how much anxiety we have. Anxiety isn't just, though, lacking control. Anxiety is also the fear of the unknown, the fear of the future and what is going to come. And obviously we don't know what the future holds. Nobody truly does. And even if we did, we don't always really have back to that control. We don't have control over that future. So when we look at the world around us and all these big macro problems that are out there, we have to understand that we can only control the things that are within our own world. Control the controllables, as I would often say in the class. Control what you can control and leave the rest to, well, to chance, I guess you could say, or if you're a Christian, you're leaving it up to God, right? You leave the rest to God, control what you can control. And that's what we're going to talk about in this segment. What are the things that we can control with our finances, even in these uncertain times? Because let's be honest, there have been uncertain times, unprecedented times throughout all of history. If you're a student of history, you will know that there have been unprecedented times. And if you were to teleport or, go back in time to that time period and talk to the people at that time, they would have said that this is unprecedented. This has never happened before. How are we going to survive this? So it's not necessarily new to have uncertain times in history. And other people have survived those times. So if they could survive those times, then we can certainly survive those times as well. So let's go ahead and talk about what that is. The things that we can control. We can control how much money we have in our emergency fund. If you have not built an emergency fund, now is the time to start doing that. This will help reduce the amount of anxiousness that you feel in the financial world, because you know you have money to fall back on if things get hard. So if you have not started building an emergency fund, now is the time to do it. And the thing is, a lot of people that are watching this video probably don't have an emergency fund, because if you look at the statistics, there are many Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And if you are living paycheck to paycheck, then that means you probably don't have an emergency fund, because all the money that's coming in is all going out after 2 weeks. So it's time to start building that. If you have an emergency fund, okay, well, here's some other things you can do to help reduce that anxiety. The next thing on the list would be to start budgeting your money if you haven't started already. You can't control your money if you don't have a plan. You have to have a plan first before you can really control your money. And once you have a plan, then you have clarity. You start to understand where your money is going, where your money used to be going, and how you can cut down on certain categories and start sending your money into the things that you need in your life, instead of just wasting it on things and not even realizing that you're wasting it. I mean, how many times do we go out to eat or go get a coffee or whatever throughout the month, all these little expenses that we don't give a second thought to. And then at the end of the month, go back and look and say, wow, I've spent $200, $300, $400 on a bunch of little expenses that I thought were not important. And if I had just said no, I could have had an extra car payment's worth of money at the end of the month. So it's something that you have to do. If you have not started budgeting, you need to. If you have money, you should be budgeting. Here's the next thing that you can do to help reduce that anxiety with all these financial questions in the world. You can start to look for other sources of income. There are only so many things you can cut back on. And then it's time to start looking for ways to increase your intake of money. So this could mean working overtime. This could mean finding a part-time job in addition to your full-time job. This could mean getting more skills so that you can get a better job than the full-time job that you have, or maybe move up in the company that you're at and get those pay increases. But you got to do something. So if you're stuck in a plateau with your current job, then it might be time to start looking elsewhere. It might be time to start thinking outside the box besides just, I worked really hard this year, I should get a raise. Oh man, I didn't get a raise because the company says they're having a hard time, so we're just getting a pay freeze. Don't sit there and just let things happen to you. You need to start making things happen. And I know that sounds like a pull yourself up by your bootstraps type of idea, but really, let's be honest. If you're going to increase your income, it starts with you. You have to make the moves. It's not other people making the moves for you. You have to go get the job. You have to go study to get the skills that you need to get the better job, or you have to go and find a part-time job somewhere else in addition to what you're already doing, or you need to go take on that overtime that you've been saying no to for how long now. Doing something is going to be better than doing nothing. So think about what it is that you're willing to do to increase that income. Maybe you've done all of these things. Well, then you could also be trying to remove debt. So if you've increased your income, you are budgeting, and you have an emergency fund, that's great. I'm happy for you. And if you're still feeling like you're drowning, then look at your debt. What do you have that you're making payments on every single month? Get rid of those car payments if you can. That's probably one of the first ones to try to go. Or maybe your credit card debts. If you can get those things off your plate, you'll feel like you gave yourself a raise at the end of the month. So look at your debts and figure out what you can remove. I would recommend the snowball method because that's going to have the biggest impact early. So list your debts from your biggest one to your smallest one. Attack the smallest one with a vengeance. Get rid of it, and then attack the next smallest and the next smallest. And before you know it, you'll start to find some greater margin in your budget. So that would be my last recommendation. Attack the debt. If you do these 4 things, you should be able to ride through the storms of life and the uncertainties of the economy and what other people are stressing about. You won't be stressing about those things because you have taken the steps to prepare and protect your finances. So to wrap up this segment, nothing I have shared with you is revolutionary. You probably heard all of those ideas before, but that's the thing. The simplest steps are often the most important and the biggest ones. And that's the funny thing about it. A lot of times we are told simple, practical things we can do, and we don't do them. We will maybe do them for a little while and get bored with it, and we want something more exciting, something more mentally stimulating, something that's out of the box that other people aren't doing. But here's the crazy part about it. If you just did the simple things first, you probably wouldn't even need those crazy revolutionary out-of-the-box things because the simple steps are often the most important ones. And if we can get the simple stuff done, then we can achieve those bigger goals and maybe do some outside the box crazy stuff with our money and see greater effects from that. But you can't run until you know how to walk. And you can't walk until you know how to pull yourself up on furniture. And you can't pull yourself onto furniture until you start to crawl. So you see, there are steps that have to be taken before you can get to those bigger things that maybe you are wanting to do. So if you have financial anxiety about what's going on in the world right now, instead of sitting there doing nothing about it, take these practical steps that I have just shared with you, and you will see yourself feeling a little bit easier. It may not fully take away that anxiousness that you're feeling, but you should be able to breathe a little bit easier.